I heard you were looking for books with Lynchian vibes. My log has something to say about this. Okay, so my name is not Margaret. My name is Jen, and welcome to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I read, discuss, and analyze horror through a literary lens. Also, disclaimer, I do not have a log, I have more of a branch, but what I do have today are books with Lynchian vibes. So I've separated it into a few different categories. So, first, I'm going to give you the categories, and then I will give you the book recommendations as they fit into each category. However, as I imagine you're probably familiar with David Lynch, since you did click on this video, you will find that a lot of these books straddle or overlap across categories. And I feel like that's a perfect encapsulation of David Lynch's work. It straddles a lot of different areas. It cannot be defined. That's also a bit of a disclaimer about the books in this video because nothing is exactly Lynchian except for the work of David Lynch. But what this book video recommendations does, what this book recommendations video does have are books that fit certain Lynchian vibes. So the first category is what is happening in this town. The second category is what is going on in this house. The third category is what is reality. The fourth category is this a fever dream? And the fifth category is can we ever truly know the artist behind the art? I will also have a book on my TBR, a book I'm planning to read in June that has been described as David Lynch meets the Grimm brothers. So let's get started on books with Lynchian vibes. Hello, so we're going to start with what is happening in this town. And the first book recommendation I have for this category actually takes place in a subdivision rather than a whole town. But it definitely fits that same idea of what is going on in this town. So this recommendation is The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist. In this novel, we follow the main character, Talitha, who is going back home. But it's not in the way that we would typically think of it. Her home 20 years ago got shrouded in this veil. Only Talitha and her friends, Brett and Grace, were able to escape this event. So the entire subdivision or neighborhood remains frozen in time 20 years ago. None of the people who are stuck there can come out, and only Talitha, Brett, and Grace can go back in. So this deals with suburban Gothic, but gives it a twist because you have these overlapping timelines, questions about what does time mean and how can time move on in one place but be frozen in another place. It also has to do with that seedy underbelly or that side of suburbia that people try to gloss over because Talitha deals with a level of abuse in her home, and her best friend Brett also deals with abuse. So you've got these cookie cutter houses where everything looks perfect on the outside, but if you dig deeper, you find that it is seedy. There are horrible things happening, and it's all happening underneath this beautiful exterior. So, for that reason, I would say this book is one of the most, if not the most, Lynchian book I've ever read. So, the next book I want to talk about is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. So, in The Virgin Suicides, you have this idyllic suburb in Detroit. You have 5 sisters, all teenagers, who die by suicide within the course of 1 year. This novel is written from the point of view of the teenage boys who were obsessed with these surreal, eccentric sisters. And again, that leads us to the question of what is happening inside this town, what is happening in this suburb, what is happening inside this house, which overlaps into our next category. As I talked about, there's going to be slippage and there's going to be overlapping of categories, but The Virgin Suicides most definitely fits that Lynchian vibe of what we see on the outside of a family versus what is going on inside the home, and questions about what is happening in this neighborhood underneath the very eyes and noses of neighbors who still fail to see what's happening inside of a home. And the last book I want to talk about for the category of what is happening in this town is The Low, Low Woods, which is a graphic novel written by Carmen Maria Machado. And this deals with a small Pennsylvania town called Shudder to Think. And this town has been on fire for years. You have creepy things in the woods like rabbits with human eyes, a deer woman who is stalking the woods, and you also have skinless men. So it opens up with 2 teenagers waking up and not remembering what happened to them. So, again, this deals with something very sinister going on in a small town. And over the course of the graphic novel, the girls begin to understand what has been going on in Shudder to Think. It has a lot to say about memory and whether someone would choose to remember or someone else might choose not to remember past trauma. So, again, that reminds us of the trauma that Laura Palmer experienced in Twin Peaks. Something sinister, once again, happening in a town. What is going on in this house? Let's talk about it. The first recommendation I have for this category is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. So, in this novel, we follow Eve. She and her partner, Charlie, are a young queer couple and they flip houses. So, they have recently purchased a house. And one day, when Charlie is out shopping and Eve is home alone, she gets a knock on the door. And Eve answers the door, and there's a man standing there with his family saying, We used to live here. Can we come in and look around for a bit? Unfortunately for Eve, she's a bit of a people pleaser, so she says yes. And this opens up a door to all kinds of what the fuckery that you could even imagine. So his whole family comes in. They're supposed to be getting ready to leave, but then his young daughter gets lost in the house. Then it just turns into this experience of a nightmarish quality, with Eve trying to get in touch with Charlie. Charlie's not answering the phone. And I'm just going to leave it there because you need to go into this with no expectations and just enjoy. If I can say the word enjoy this novel, there were genuinely parts that creep me out, and that's not easy to do. So, again, this fits in with what is going on in this house. So, the second book I have for this category is the mammoth book House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I feel like a lot of you probably know what House of Leaves is about, but the simple premise is House of Leaves is about a house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. So you have overlapping timelines, you have different points of view, you have an entire quasi academic point of view with footnotes. This one too gets in your head so much. It's, I think, in a lot of ways, the author messing with the readers to make us kind of dig into our recesses and try to solve things that can't necessarily be solved. So you also have epistolary elements in this novel. And there are pages where you are literally supposed to turn or put the book towards a mirror and read it that way. You have different fonts according to which point of view the section is about. You have pages with little to no text on them. You have pages that you have to turn. Again, this is one of the ones I was talking about. Text is written this way, and then down here it's at the bottom of the page. So you have to turn it like that. And there's also text in this book that's written circularly, like you yourself are even going down into the labyrinth. So the house becomes a maze of not only physical proportions, but a maze of the mind. This book also had parts that really creeped me out. So if you want a book that deals with catastrophe, I dropped books. I'm so sorry. If you want a book that deals with a labyrinth of the mind and also a physical, actual labyrinth that calls into question the reliability of different points of view and calls into question reality. Again, House of Leaves will give you all of those things and much, much more. What is reality? I don't know. Let's talk about some books that fit this category. So, the first book I want to talk about is Full Immersion by Gemma Amore. This story opens up with our main character, Magpie, who sees her own dead body. This has themes of trauma, depression, and again, questioning what is reality. What has happened to Magpie? What is happening to Magpie? What's going to happen to Magpie? So you also too get that overlapping of the timeline, that hauntological element where past and future are haunting Magpie's present. That's all you need to know about full immersion. So the next book I want to talk about, I actually have two books by the same author that I want to recommend. The first one is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. The second is We Spread, and they are both by Ian Reed. So I want to talk first of all about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, you have a young woman who is telling the story's first person point of view. She is on a road trip with her boyfriend to meet his parents. You're in her mind as they're taking this trip, and she has been thinking a lot lately about ending things. Ending things may have a double meaning in I'm Thinking of Ending Things. What you think is happening may not be exactly what is happening. So this road trip may in fact be something very different than what it appears to be on the surface. The next story or the next book by Ian Reed that I want to recommend that I just talked about is We Spread. And this follows an older woman whose spouse dies. And unbeknownst to her, her spouse set up this situation with a neighbor that when he died, that his wife was supposed to go into this long-term care facility. So she gets there and everything seems fine at first, but then she starts to question whether there may be something sinister going on in this nursing home. So it is challenging in a lot of ways to read because it does deal with the potential or the possibility that our main character is dealing with some dementia. But it just gives that vibe of what is real, what is in someone's mind, and what is actually happening. And I think if that's what you're looking for, questions about reality, this one would definitely hit those Lynchian vibes for you. Is this a fever dream? Maybe. And here's some books that fit the category of is this a fever dream? So the first one I want to talk about is Lost in the Garden by Adam S. Leslie. So in Lost in the Garden, you have a perpetual summer. So time itself and the cyclical nature of seasons, they're all out of whack. So you've got an abundant, everlasting summer. You also have people returning from the dead. They're not exactly zombies because they're not trying to eat people or brains. They're not rotting. They're not quite ghosts because they're a little more corporal, how do you say that word? Tangible, more tangible than a ghost would be. But if you get close to them, they will attack you, sometimes even with weapons. But the main part of this story centers around a group of young people who are taking a trip to Almondby. Although local folklore warns against going to Almondby. These kids have been warned by their parents and other adults, we don't go to Almondby. But that's exactly what they set out to do. And the further you get into this novel, the more uncanny and creepy vibes start to peek in. There's also, like when the kids are on their trip to Almondby, they keep hearing blips of very fuzzy voices across shortwave radio. So again, that's very Lynchian, this idea of hearing these voices, hearing them coming from somewhere, but you don't know exactly where. There's like this electricity kind of buzzing in the air. And just to give you an idea about how beautifully this novel is written, I do just want to read you the first paragraph. Ice cream vans. Let me try again. Ice cream van chimes elicit a synesthetic Pavlovian response. The sound tastes of vanilla. It tastes of chocolate flake and neon red spirals of strawberry sauce. It tastes of all the myriad possibilities illustrated in lurid color beside the serving hatch. A miniature church cast in pinks and yellows and powder blues, its oversaturated bells calling the children of the parish to worship. The communion wafer, the communion soft whip ice cream, the blessed chocolate flake rearing from its icy white hillock like the pole of the holy crucifix, waiting for the crossbeam, waiting in giddy anticipation to receive the condemned Christ in his martyrdom, and the swirl of strawberry sauce right at the very end, representing the blood of our Lord swirling down the hill of Golgotha. It's a chunker, but I loved this book so much. And the next book I want to talk about with what is this a fever dream is Bunny by Mona Awad. So Bunny follows Samantha, who is in grad school earning her MFA, and she is constantly annoyed by this elitist clique of women in her grad school classes, and they call themselves the Bunnies, and they address each other all as Bunny. However, once the Bunnies invite Samantha to join their smut salon, rather than being turned off and annoyed by them, she becomes obsessed with them. So once she joins the smut salon and she finds out what these bunnies do during their smut salons, she encounters something very, very strange and potentially violent. And when the book ends, you're not sure what you read, you're not sure what it means, but if you're like me, you enjoyed the ride. So, the final book I want to talk about for Is This a Fever Dream is another book by Mona Awad. And this one is Rouge. So I want you to look closely at the cover. A rose, right? But look at it this way. A jellyfish. So everything is not what it may seem to be. This book follows our main character who returns home after her mother's funeral. She encounters this strange woman hanging around, and our main character, is absolutely obsessed with beauty and how to make herself more beautiful. And we find out that's because that's the way her mom was, and her mom passed that down to her. So when she delves into the beauty world that her mother was in, the main character finds out that there is a lot going on that she never realized. It has a lot to say about the beauty industry and what people put themselves through in order to attain this level of beauty that can really never be attained by most of us, at least those of us, average, daily people who don't have incredible amounts of money to spend on it. It also has weird appearances of Tom Cruise. So that kind of reminds me of some Lynchian, movies. You'll be watching a movie and you'll be like, wait, that's Gary Busey in this movie? Or Richard Pryor in the same movie as Gary Busey? Or yes, actually, believe it or not, a Lynch movie with Billy Ray Cyrus in it. So I feel like that, not only this surrealism and this fever dream like experience that you have when you read this book, that's Lynchian, but also just a random actor appearing in a story. And so that leaves us at the end of the fever dream category with only one more category left to go. Finally, the last category. Can we ever truly know the artist behind the art? The book recommendation I have for this category is Night Film by Marisha Pessel. I did a deep dive video into Night Film, which I will link down in the description box below if you would like an extra thorough look at the novel. It does have spoilers, but it is labeled when it gets to that point. But in Night Film, we open up with the death of a beautiful young woman, Ashley Cordova. It is ruled a suicide. However, investigative reporter Scott McGrath thinks possibly it could have been murder. Another aspect that's very important is that Ashley is the daughter of an eccentric, somewhat reclusive director who has garnered a cult following. Some believe, including Scott, that Stanislav Cordova, the director, Ashley's father, has actually committed some very, very heinous acts. Some also believe that perhaps the events in his film may have been not exactly fictional. Maybe some of the horrible things that happen to people in the films really happened to them. So you have a lot of different layers going on here. And if you want something that's going to call into question how much we can know about an artist or a director or someone who's both an artist and a director, then I think you would most definitely enjoy Night Film. So the last thing that I want to talk about is a book coming up on my TBR, a book that I am going to be reading in June because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this book was described as David Lynch meets the Grimm brothers, and this is In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. In this magical and frightening tale of colonial America, nothing is quite as it seems. A wife gone missing may in fact have fled her stifling and abusive home. The inviting splendor of new American wilderness may in fact be an orchestration by a malevolent force. Women who lack both voice and sovereignty may seek freedom at the price of damnation. Set against the eerie, dangerous world of bygone New England, In the House in the Dark of the Woods is a historical encounter unlike any you've ever read, and a novel you'll not soon forget. So let me know if you want to join me in June and we can do a buddy read of In the House in the Dark of the Woods. Please also let me know what books have Lynchian vibes that I may have missed. I am always looking for more Lynch. Thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you would hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell so we can continue to talk about the books that we love and to give more Lynchian recommendations to each other. Have a wonderful day, night, or evening, wherever you may be, and happy reading.